Seahawks win 20-17. They improved to 5-5 on the season, 3-1 on the road, and they split the series with the 49ers, one game each. Go over scoring plays as we always do. First quarter, Jason Myers hits a 52-yard field goal to give the Seahawks a 3-0 lead. Very end of the first quarter, almost the exact end of the first quarter, Brock Purdy runs in from 10 yards to make it 7-3 at the end of one. Second quarter, only scoring play, Jason Myers from 57 yards out connects. By the way, I thought that field goal was blocked. It really looked like to me that it got tipped or whatever. Went in just fine. Nice to see a couple of 50-yarders from Myers today. 7-6 at the end of the first half. Third quarter, Jake Moody makes a 33-yard field goal to make it 10-6. And Kenneth Walker, a 1-yard plunge into the end zone, 13-10 at the end of three. Fourth quarter, just the two scoring plays. Juan Jennings, 3-yard pass from Brock Purdy to make it 17-13, but with 12 seconds left, Geno Smith runs in from 13 yards to give the Seahawks the 20-17 victory. Before we get started talking about the positives and negatives, I want to do two things. First of all, I want to thank Simply Seattle and remind you that code MOLLYWOP15 saves 15% on anything you want in the store. MOLLYWHOP15. 15% off. Great deal from great people. Link in the description. The very best in Seattle sports gear. Number two, I wanted to give a shout out to everyone who has followed me and is connecting with me on Blue Sky. I'm having a blast on Blue Sky. It's so much better than that other website. Bluesky.com, I think is the address. Guess I should know it. But download Blue Sky. It's great. It's everything you wanted from that other app and better. And I really appreciate all the support people have shown me since I rejoined. I joined last year, but had a blast with that website over the last week or so. Some people are calling it an echo chamber. If that's true, I really like echo chambers. So yeah, check it out. My handle is at Crawford Chris V. All right, we always start with the negatives in a win and then finish with the positives. Not really sure there's a ton of negatives here. Offense scuffled at times. I guess the obvious one is the run game still doesn't look great. I mean, Walker finishes with 54 yards on 14 carries. That's not abhorrent, but still can't get that 4-yard average. Charbonnet was very ineffective with his touches. We'll talk about one, I think, in a second that can go in the negative section. In fact, we can just do it now. I hated that fourth down call. Hated it. And as big of a fan as I am of Brian Grubb, there are some moments here where he's really frustrated me. And if you want to just say, well, Chris, if those plays work, you're not saying anything. Correct. You know what those plays didn't do? Work. And I have not been a huge fan of the play calling on short yardage. It just hasn't been for me. The one exception was I really liked that sweep that they ran on fourth down where Walker was able to get some blocking and some leverage. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick was the Connor Williams situation. And I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I hope everything's okay. I really hope he's okay because for those of you who missed it, Connor Williams, the starting center for the Seahawks, retires just a couple days before this game. Sounds like there's some mental health stuff going on, and the very sensitive subject for me, for everyone. But with the issues that I have had with my own mental health, and many of you have, it's not something to take lightly. So I hope everything is okay. I thought Olafemi played pretty well. One really bad snap, but the interior of this offensive line still is just not great. Still just is not even kind of close to great. The negative defensively was the third and long defense wasn't very good. I would actually, and this is just my personal opinion, I would actually cover Juan Jennings on 3rd and 11, which is something they'd failed to do a couple of times, and then wide open for that touchdown as well. These corners are super talented. You also see that they're super young sometimes. And there's some gaffes. There are some gaffes for sure. A lot of pressure on them, especially with injuries. They're They're covering some tough wideouts too. Juan Jennings is obviously very talented. Deebo Samuel, and we'll get into Deebo Samuel actually in the positive section. The secondary still can do a better job, especially on third and long. And I don't think it's really play calling. I'd have to really dive deep into the play calling on third down and what they're doing schematically. I am not Hugh Millen. I will make that abundantly clear. I have an eye for football, but I'm not a former NFL quarterback or anything close. You'd be surprised looking at this body that I'm not a former NFL quarterback. I know, but uh, you got to the results. You see the results. You got to be better on third and long. All right, let's get into the positives now because I think there are a lot. Jackson Smith and Jigba is awesome. And, I know a lot of people might be nostalgic for more Tyler Lockett targets. This is how I want the Seahawks offense to operate. I want Jackson Smith and Jigba and DK Metcalf getting the overwhelming majority of the targets because they're really good. They're really, really good. And I'm not saying Tyler Lockett isn't good. Tyler Lockett is still a perfectly serviceable, maybe even above average third wide receiver. But he's not those two guys. He's not. He just isn't. At one point, he was. This is how Father Time works. And I love seeing how involved they were. 20 of the 31 targets to those two guys who are your best playmakers. All due respect to Kenneth Walker. All due respect to Tyler Lockett, who we just talked about. Some due respect to A.J. Barner, who's filling in for Noah Fant. But those are your guys. And I think you saw today them use them like they are the guys. And I think that the game plan today offensively, well, not super successful, 20 points, and you need a very, very late touchdown to get to that 20 points. I thought the offensive game plan was sound, minus those short yardage plays. I thought they did a really nice job offensively and scheming. We talked about the run game. While Kenneth Walker only gets 54 yards, I thought he ran hard. He always runs hard. Saw this ability to make dudes miss. He's a really good player. It's just too bad he doesn't have a competent offensive line behind him. It's just not there. So, yeah. And I also like that there was some balance today. Sure, 4 rushes for Geno is a little misleading because, a couple scrambles late. And 4 carries for Charbonnet that weren't effective, but 32 pass attempts, 23 rush attempts. That's not a bad balance. That's not a bad balance at all. Defensively, I thought that the Seahawks did a really nice job. Now, you take a look at the rushing numbers. They ran 27 times for 131 yards. And McCaffrey goes 19 for 79. It's a decent game. It's a little over 4 yards a carry. I think that if you watched the Seahawks defense today, you felt pretty confident or comfortable with what they did. Now, the pass rush wasn't great, but I think they made Purdy uncomfortable enough. And I think what you really saw was, sure, they weren't getting to Purdy, but only 159 yards passing for him. 5.7 yards per pass attempt. That's very good. And I think Brock Purdy is a better quarterback than most people. It's weird. It's kind of similar to the guy who we'll end the video with, where you can't properly rate him, it seems. Either people think he is the next great, or people think that he's just a product of the system. I think he's somewhere in between and, above average. A good player. A solid quarterback. Not elite. And certainly helped by this San Francisco offensive scheme. But I think he's pretty darn solid. And the Seahawks did a nice job with him today. Maybe a couple of losses of containment there. But outside of the touchdown run, nothing that really makes you go, ugh. I thought that the secondary outside of those 3rd and 11s was very solid. I thought Devin Witherspoon played a very good game. I thought Rick Woolen played a solid game. Linebackers were Ernest Jones is a baller. I am so impressed by what I've seen from Ernest Jones. I thought by the way, speaking of other transactions, the decision to release Tyrell Dodson, I found it a little peculiar, But I think that his replacement today, Tyrese Knight, showed you why he's kind of the future in that position. He did had a very strong, game. Um, Derek Hall was solid. Boye Mafe was solid. Um, Leonard Williams continues to be improving each week. Jonathan Hankins, I think, had one of his best games as a Seahawk. I was really happy with what the defense did. There some late breakdowns, like I said, but for the most part, I think the defense did a really nice job. And then let's end with Geno, who doesn't get the touchdown pass, throws one interception that wasn't great, takes 4 sacks. I thought Geno Smith played a fantastic football game today, especially at the end of the game. That throw to DK Metcalf, that layered throw to get it over the head of that safety and drop it right into Metcalf's mitts. Phenomenal. And, there was a lot of talk about how Geno played last week or 2 weeks ago since the bye week. And I think those who refused to criticize him were silly. It's insane. Those were 2 bad throws. Bad throws. The one interception off Jason's hands, I don't care about. I mean, I care, but you know what I mean. It's not on Geno. The other 2 interceptions, I saw a bunch of people try to rush to his defense. No, they were bad throws. They were really bad throws. Maybe they weren't bad throws in decision making, but they were horribly located throws. You can tell me all you want that he was trying to throw the ball away on that first interception in the red zone. I don't care. It's a bad throw. But then you saw the elite version of Geno too. And I hate using that word elite a lot, but there are moments where Geno Smith is an elite quarterback. And there are throws Geno Smith makes that only a handful of quarterbacks can make, which makes it frustrating when he does the silly too, right? But there are some moments from Geno Smith that are just spectacular. And today you saw some of those spectacular. And that underrated athleticism at the end. It wasn't a quarterback draw at the end, but I think Geno read that defense and said, you know what? If my first look isn't there, I'm gone. And it wasn't there, and so he was gone. And to get that touchdown at that point, I don't know if the Seahawks are going to be a playoff team or not. I lean towards no. But if you lose today, it's basically over. If you want to say that play saved the Seahawks season, I don't disagree with you. It was a must-have game and a must-have moment, and your quarterback stepped up as much as he possibly could. It's awesome. And it was awesome to see after I think it was a really bad game from Geno. You can show me all the PFF stuff and the big throws and stuff like that. Some of those big throws only happened because of how bad he was before it. But today, outside of that pick, Geno Smith was phenomenal. Phenomenal. And you cannot say that Geno can't step up in the biggest moments. You cannot. There's been too many examples like today. So that was good. That was good. So they're 5-5 in this just absolute cesspool of a division right now. I believe next week you take on the Arizona Cardinals at home. Really good test. You could argue right now Arizona's the best team in the division. You probably should. They certainly have the best record. So be interesting. It's an interesting schedule because you have Arizona for 2. Sandwiched in between that, you go to the Jets, who are just a trash fire of a team. And then Green Bay and Minnesota at home. This is an interesting end to the schedule. You could argue that the Seahawks are only better than one of these teams that they're going to play from this point on, the New York Jets. Bears, I would probably say they're better than the Bears, but all of them are winnable. There's no game that you look at right here and say, oh, well, that's a loss. Oh, everything here is winnable. And if you can go 5-4, 4-3 down the stretch, right? Yeah, 4-3. You got a shot. Going 9-8 is not my favorite. But for those of you who appreciate going to the playoffs, and you should, could do it. Could do it. You know what else you could do is please hit like, please hit subscribe. I really appreciate the support. Back with a bunch of stuff coming up. Yeah, good win and good for you, Geno Smith. You deserved it.